Hey everybody, how's it going? We got Buckin's 266 here. We have the cases prepped, and let's throw together a bottom end today on video. We have our ceramic bearings. Oh, these sound nice. I'm going to put these together with cold and heat. So you expand one part and you contract the other part. And these are a press fit, these bearings. You can't get them in the pocket unless you heat the case up. So we're going to do that today, and hopefully by the end of the day we'll have this bottom end together. So follow along with me. Okay, so there's 3 ways to do this. Heat the cases up, put the bearings in the case, okay? Put your crankshaft in a freezer, which will make it shrink just a little bit, okay? Apply heat to the bearing once it's in the case, and slide your crankshaft in there, okay? That's the first way. The second way is put the bearings on the crankshaft, so heat these up a little bit, make sure the crank is cold, and they will slide on there by hand, okay? That way works good. Then let that assembly cool down, heat your cases, and slide your cases over top of the crank and bearings. The third way is to buy a factory puller / pusher, and those have different spacers, and you can push the bearing over the crank assembly. There's a lot of argument about which is the best way. You know what the best way I say, guys, is whatever way you work that makes your bottom ends last and you don't have any problems with them. I've used all 3 ways. They're all good. They all work. The factory puller pushers are probably the best way. But you need to buy a kit for each type of saw, depending on what saw you have, and you know it can get pretty expensive. But if you're not comfortable doing it this way, by all means, please buy the kit, and you'll be happy. And then just add parts to the kit as you work on different saws. Me, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I do a lot of different saws that it would be impossible for me to have all the different pullers. So I use the heat and cool method. It works good for me. I've never had a problem with it. So anyhow, I'm going to get this build going. I'm going to put the bearings on the crank, and I'm going to heat the cases and slide the crank and bearing assemblies into the case. That's usually how I do it. Never had a problem. And again, if you're not comfy with that, put the bearings in the crank first, and then either pull or push your crankshaft through. Pulling is usually better because you don't want to distort the crankshaft. Okay, I'm going to get going, start heating these cases, and I'm probably just going to put them on the wood stove for half an hour, 45 minutes, and get them good and hot. And you guys will see it'll just go shunk and pop right together. Okay, this is my bottom end piece of wood. I got various holes drilled in it if I need to mount a crank in here. It works for me, and then I don't light my bench top on fire, because I've done that, and that's not a party that I enjoy. Again, handy dandy heat and strip gun. Just gonna heat these up a little bit. You don't need to get them smoking hot. You just want to make sure. A little bit of schmutz on there. Hold on. I gotta figure out what's going on here. Oh, there we go. Nothing. Okay. Just want to heat these up enough that they're just warm to the touch. And I got the crankshaft in a plastic bag on the floor. My floor is still frozen here, so it's icy cold. So these should just slip right over. Sometimes I'll put these in my pocket and they'll slip over. You don't need much on these, just enough. Okay, take your heated bearing, shunk, right over. Okay, make sure it's all the way on the crankshaft. Same thing with this one, ready? Oh, whew, that's hot. A little too warm there, friends. Little too warm. Okay. Okay, boom. That's what you want right there. Okay, now I usually just let them sit like this or whatever you guys want to do. Okay, you see how easy that is? you want things to be hot enough so that they just fall on. You don't want to be, you can put these on with a piece of pipe and a hammer or whatever, but it's like if you distort these crank halves, you could throw the whole crank out of balance, and it'll be doing this on a microscopic level. They can get stuck. You can gall these surfaces. Right there, that one was a little warm, but literally they're just hot to the touch, and shunk, on they go. Okay, and now they're on there, and it's like these bearings are smooth as glass. Okay, we're gonna wait for our cases. We're gonna wait for our cases, and we'll do one side at a time. We'll put the gasket in the middle of the cases, and with any luck, this will just pop together quick and easy. I heat the cases up to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. You can go a little warmer. You don't want them so warm that you're going to burn your gasket. So there you guys go. I'll hit you guys up when we have the cases heated. Okay, we got our crank half here. It is nice and warm to the touch. Make sure you take off all the rubber bits. I'm going to hit it again. Okay, I want to expand this pocket so I can just drop this crank right on there. And again, this is cooled off again. I like doing cranks this time of the year because it's cold outside, it's cold in here. So I can just naturally cool off parts without, you know, without really putting them in the freezer or anything. Okay, had the heat on that for about 3 or 4 minutes. And again, make sure, you want to be quick with this, make sure you get the right side of the crank on the right side of the case. Okay, so the side, this is your flywheel side. Okay, the side with the timing key, this is your clutch side. And again, I want to heat this back up because I already took too long. This is a game of numbers. You want to be as quickly as you can, or be as quick as you can. Okay, ready? I'm going to take this. You want to get it in there straight, and it should just fall in. That's it. Done. Leave it. Again, I have the oil pump installed as a stop. Okay? So that just fell down onto the oil pump, and it should be good. We're going to let this whole thing cool down. As it cools, it will cinch down on this bearing. I want this whole assembly cool. And the other way with pulling them through is a lot faster, but I'm generally not in a hurry. I live in a place with no services and gravel roads, so I'm pretty chill. So I'm just going to let this cool down. I got the other crank or case half on top of the wood stove. They don't get smoldering hot up there, but I'll keep an eye on it and make sure. Okay, so this is cooled down enough that we're going to start putting the gasket on. I'll just take a little bit of brake clean, okay, just moisten this, and I'll just wipe it down real quick again. I've already cleaned this and degreased it and made sure that the surfaces were true. Okay, just making sure we didn't get anything on there. I will take the smallest amount of Moto Seal. Basically, I just use this to hold my gasket in place. Okay, this isn't the side with the studs. The studs are on the other side. On these, I typically would do it with the side with the studs, but on these, that plastic bearings, or the bearing housing for the crank seal is plastic, and I don't want plastic on a heated case, because then you'll warp that real bad. Okay, I'm just putting the thinnest film on here. I just want to hold it in place. I got my other half on the wood stove. Wood stoves are great for doing bottom ends. Okay, this one enough that it's just going to hold it in place. Okay, make sure your hands are clean. Grab your brand new gasket, which I'm going to grab right here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that little extra bit. Uh-oh, we got a little bit in the case. Okay, I'm going to lay this on there and line it up. These highway gasket sets, they look pretty nice. They fit well. Again, I don't like the carb gaskets. Most aftermarket carb gaskets, they just don't line up because those holes are too big. Now again, when you put this in, make sure your crank, I'm just going to move you guys over here, make sure your crank is centered. In my younger days when I was starting out a few times, and you guys will do this, this is how you learn, you make mistakes, right? You'll put it together and this will be all the way around. You'll go to put the cases together and you'll go, why doesn't this fit? That's why. Okay, so we're good. I'm going to grab the other case half. I'm going to get it nice and hot. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to put the other case half here. I'm going to get it really hot and I'm going to go shunk over top of that other bearing. Okay, the reason that I like the whole case to be hot, they retain heat. They retain heat easier. Like they keep the heat for longer. If you just heat the pocket, they cool down too fast and it's really hard. It's really, really hard to get it back together. Okay? I'm just going to heat this up. I want this good and hot. I would like it to drop completely over that bearing. When the cases start to smoke, generally they're hot enough. You can smell it. They have a certain smell. Okay, now I got to work fast, so if I bump the camera or anything like that, I'm not going to be able to move it. There we go. See that? Dunk! One piece all the way on there. Okay. Now, I'm going to flip this thing on up and down and I'm going to put the crank bolts in. We can now remove our piston stop, which is the oil pump. Now, make sure, again, when I'm just telling you guys all the little things that I've done, and believe me, all these little things I'm warning you about, it's because I've done it and went, oops. Okay, take off any rubber, anything that can melt when you're doing this, because these cases are going to get hot enough to melt things, okay? Something interesting about these saws is this is one of the only saws that I know of that have standard and metric fasteners. They have both. Kind of interesting. Now once I get this cinched down, I'm going to make sure that the crank's centered. I'm going to give it a little tap. It looks darn close. This could be a good one. I actually like to tap these when they're still warm because they will move way easier. Okay, I'm just going to cinch this down. I'm not going to reef on them yet. I just want everything to cool down. Okay. Now, here, you guys, I'm going to look at the center. Okay. Crank needs to go slightly that way. Now I'm going to be careful because these are ceramic bearings. Okay. We are so close. Okay. There you go. Just like that. Okay. Smooth as glass. Okay, that's what you want. You just give it a quick little wrap. And again, this hammer weighs nothing. It's, you know, just whack. Okay, don't hit it with a steel hammer because you'll mushroom the threads. There we go. And if you look, this crank is perfectly centered. Okay, that's what you want. You want equal space on either side of the crank lobes. Okay, that's how you know it's centered. Now, yes, there is play. There is play that, you know, on the wrist pin, but you want everything as centered as possible, especially when you're building something like this. This saw is going to spin major RPM. We don't want anything off balance or anything that can give us trouble. I am super happy with this. I'm going to finish cinching these down, and that is a bottom end build in a nutshell. Okay, it's about 10 minutes later. Like, basically no resistance. Okay, look at that. These bearings are bone dry. Okay, that's what you want. If it's stiff, you need to give it a good wrap on one side or the other. And usually the side that you need to hit is the side with less space, right? I don't know how well it's going to pick it up. This crank is nicely centered. When you put the rod in the center, okay, of the big end bearing, and it hits dead center of the case halves, okay? So you can feel it. The first couple times you do this, you're going to fumble with it. You might have to take it apart again. We've all been there. It's just practice, and I've done so many of these things in the last several years that I know the ins and outs of them, you know what I mean? I've made all the mistakes, so if I can help you guys with this stuff, I'm going to do it every time. Okay, folks, it's the next morning. I shut her down for the night, let this thing cool off. Just going to take a sip of my Go Juice. It's about 7-ish. In the morning. It's beautiful out. No, not much wind. It's a little cold, but if you guys can hear the fan, I got the fan going, a little bit of a fire. Okay, so it's funny. This bottom end is stiffer than it was yesterday. It's not binding though. Okay, it's just cold. It's like when you pull over a fresh power saw, or you pull over a cold power saw. It's a little stiff to pull over. Well, it's because everything's contracted, right? But basically, I hope that helps you guys do bottom ends. Bottom ends scare a lot of people. They scared me when I started working on saws. And I fumbled my way through my first couple of bottom ends. I did, believe me. And I made mistakes, and I had bearings. That got stuck as I was putting the cases together. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. You guys are going to have to fumble through your first couple of bottom ends before you get it right. All I can say is, take your time, make sure the cases are hot enough when you put the bearings in, put that crank in the freezer, make sure it's chilled, and warm the bearings up, and everything should slide together. If the phone rings or anything goes on and you have to stop for a minute or two, reheat whatever's supposed to be hot, because this stuff cools quickly. Okay? Make sure you use a bearing stop. Okay, in this case, it's the oil pump. That bearing sits against this lip. Okay, so again, we use that so that the bearing doesn't over travel. If the bearing goes too far in the case, you're gonna end up having troubles with your oil pump. It's gonna bind up when you reef it down, and then if you tighten down this oil pump against the bearing, you're putting side load on the bearing. That's not what we want. Side load on these little bearings, they will blow up. It's going to happen, especially on the side that gets the hottest, okay? This side has your fan, which is your flywheel moving air. This side is where the rubber meets the road, right? There's always going to be more load on this side than that side. So when you're putting these together, just be aware that you don't want side load on your bearing. I will double and triple check everything, because this thing's going to be a hot rod when we're done with it. Okay, and again, these saws, I recommend newcomers build these because they are very simple to build. If you can get the oil pump off, okay, they're very simple to build. And remember, your crank seal mounts, okay, in here. When you first start, you're not going to know how much pressure to tap a crank seal in. A lot of you guys have probably put seals in the rear of your transmission, or if you're a wrench, you've done a few seals. The problem is with chainsaws, these seals are so tiny, and it's like you got to get them to go in straight and tap, 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 tap. Well, sometimes you'll over travel them, right? Well, in a traditional saw, there's a shoulder there. The shoulder wraps around, the bearing goes against the shoulder. Easier to put the bearing in, but then if you overdrive your seal, that seal's done. You're gonna have to pull it out with a seal driver. In these, if you over travel it, well, you could just keep driving it through gently, it'll pop through and you can start over again. Typically, if you drive the seal through, you can put it back in and it won't leak. So, it's a good deal. I really like doing these saws for that reason, because it's not as much of a headache to put your seals in. Some of the smaller stills in that, I find the seal pockets are really tight, and it's like you got to be so careful. Take your time, make sure that seal's driving and flush. Sometimes when you start, the seal will go crooked. Quit right there, get the seal back out. You want it to drive in flat, okay? I'll show you guys how I do these. I typically push these in with an arbor press because it's level, and I just go, and that's it. You know, like the seal is completely flat. So, and we will do that. I'll show you guys how I put crank seals in this thing. See, it's getting warmer in here, and this thing's getting slipperier and slipperier. The next thing I'm going to do on this saw, I need to mount that top end, that go fast piston. I need to measure everything. Because we're mixing and matching components, I got to check the squish. I got to check the skirt lengths on the piston, because I want to make sure I'm not going to free port, which is when the skirt over travels the exhaust port and you end up with your charge that's supposed to go into the transfer. When the piston's coming down, right, and it comes up, you're going to end up with some fresh air and fuel going out of your exhaust port. Some guys do that and they're not worried about it. Other guys say the saws don't idle. It's on a saw by saw basis. I stay away from free porting like the plague. If you're building a race saw and you're going up utmost limits, I guess a little free porting in a race saw isn't a big deal, because that thing's making 3 cuts, right? As long as it starts, race saws typically don't idle and they're on the throttle. But a work saw, it has to idle, and free porting often can cause you idling issues. This thing's going to be hot, but I can't send a saw to Buckin that doesn't idle. The man makes his living on a power saw. You know, when he's doing work, I want my saws, I want him to be able to throw that thing on the ground and idle whenever possible. And I work very hard to make sure that these saws are runnable. They are fun. And they could be considered a toy, but a man that lives on a power saw, if I'm building saws for him, my saws better run properly. I want them to start easily, and I want them to idle. And when they hit the wood, I want them to pull chain. So that's the deal there. So in the next video, we're going to measure everything. I'll show you guys what we came up with. I want to measure that CCC piston and write down specs in my notebook, because again, guys, I write everything down just to see where it is, and I guarantee those pistons are bang on. I would bet you money that those pistons are plus or minus, you know, a hair for dimensions. That thing's quality. That CCC piston it's so nice. I'm impressed. Some people don't like forged pistons, and you know, forged pistons, guys, you got to warm your saw up more. Buckin warms his saws up. He's very good about that. I'm not concerned. If you're a guy that likes to pull and go, forged pistons are not for you. They heat up at a different rate than a stock cast piston, and you will seize that saw cold if you don't warm up with a forged piston. But I've used forged pistons I had a super high horsepower Harley Davidson engine that I built. When I put forged pistons in that thing, on a dyno, because I used to dyno my work to actually see what I was getting, those forged pistons, it was incredible how much more power they made, and they're stronger and they're lighter. So do you need a forged piston in a regular build? That's up to you. But for something like this, if I can upgrade the strength of a component, especially something as important as the piston, I'm going to do it. Because we want to win, right? We don't want to put this thing together and blow it up. We're going to have a lot of hours into this saw by the time we're done. Okay, guys, I've flapped long enough. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, my email is on my About page. That's what it's up there for. If I can help you guys, please send me an email. If you're doing a bottom end and you're not sure what to do or you need some clarification, just hit me up, guys. I try and make myself available as often as possible. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later.